Welcome, Tolbert's students, to Chapter 9, Lesson 5. Chapter 9, Respiration, Lesson 5, the final lesson in Chapter 9. How much energy does cellular respiration actually generate? Together, glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, and the electron transport chain release about 36 molecules of ATP per glucose molecule. If there's oxygen present, in the presence of oxygen, the complete breakdown of glucose through cellular respiration results in the production of about 36 ATP molecules. This represents about 36% of the total energy in glucose. The remaining 64% is lost as heat. In the picture here, you can notice the three parts of cellular respiration that we've talked about. We've talked about the first stage is glycolysis, the second stage being cellular respiration, and the second stage being the citric acid cycle or the Krebs cycle, and the third stage being the electron transport chain. We make two in glycolysis, 2 Krebs cycle, and 32 in the electron transport chain. You add those up, that gives you your total amount of ATP. 32, 33, 34, 35, 36. All right. Energy totals. Just read. The cell can generate ATP from just about any source. Even though we've modeled it using glucose, complex carbohydrates are broken down into simple sugars like glucose. Lipids and proteins can be broken down into molecules that enter the Krebs cycle or glycolysis at one of several places. You make ATP from carbs, proteins, and fats. So, ladies and gentlemen, what we're noticing here is that, yes, you can make energy from everything you eat, ATP. It just enters the process, this cellular respiration, in different spots. How do organisms generate energy when oxygen is not available? Okay, this would be anaerobic. So, in the absence of oxygen, fermentation releases energy from food molecules by producing adenosine triphosphate. Okay, so absence of oxygen is the key word there. So absence means no oxygen. This is an anaerobic process. So, go through what's called fermentation. Fermentation is a process by which energy can be released from food molecules in the absence of oxygen. Fermentation happens or occurs in the cytoplasm of cells. As you can see from this picture, today we'll be covering two types of fermentation. You have alcoholic fermentation and lactic acid fermentation. Lactic acid fermentation happens to be the type of fermentation that people go through. Alcoholic fermentation is the type of fermentation we use in order to make beverages like wine and beer. Under anaerobic condition, fermentation follows glycolysis. During fermentation, cells convert NADH produced by glycolysis back into the electron carrier NAD+, which allows glycolysis to continue to produce ATP. Alcoholic fermentation, copy this slide. Yeast and a few other microorganisms use alcoholic fermentation that produce ethanol alcohol and carbon dioxide. This process is used to produce alcoholic beverages and causes bread dough to rise. So here, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about alcoholic fermentation, and this is usually done by things like yeast and stuff like that. Not you. We don't go through alcoholic fermentation. We go through lactic acid fermentation. Please copy this equation down. You need to know this. This here is the formula for alcoholic fermentation. Okay, pyruvic acid plus NADH yields alcohol, some carbon dioxide, and then NADH is once again turned into NAD+. Lactic acid fermentation. Most organisms, including human, carry out fermentation using a chemical reaction that converts pyruvic acid to lactic acid. Here's that formula that you can write down. This here is the lactic acid fermentation of using lactic acid. The other one was alcoholic. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, humans go through lactic acid fermentation. Energy and exercise. How does the body produce ATP during different stages of exercise? For short, quick bursts of energy, the body uses ATP already in the muscles as glycogen, well as ATP made by lactic acid fermentation. For exercise longer than 90 seconds, cellular respiration is the only way to continue generating ATP. So, short, quick bursts, we use of course the energy from glycogen, short, quick bursts. But when anything's longer than that, we have to use cellular respiration. You need to know that. Cells normally contain a small amount of adenosine triphosphate produced during cellular respiration, enough for a few seconds of intense activity. Lactic acid fermentation can supply enough ATP for about 90 seconds of exercise. However, extra oxygen is required to get rid of this lactic acid. Following the intense exercise, you start to huff and puff for several minutes in order to pay back the built-up oxygen debt and clear the lactic acid from the body. So that's why you start to breathe. So you start to huff and puff, so you take in more oxygen so that you can catch up, so to speak. For intense exercise lasting longer than 90 seconds, cellular respiration is required to continue the production of adenosine triphosphate. Cellular respiration releases more energy slowly than fermentation does. Okay, fermentation and glycolysis release energy fast, folks. Now, the other processes of cellular respiration, whereas the Krebs cycle and the electron transport chain stuff, that allows us to release energy slowly, but more energy is released. The body stores energy in the form of carbohydrate called glycogen. These glycogen stores are enough to last about 15 to 20 minutes. After that, the body begins to break down other stored molecules, including fat, for energy. So this is why, if you are one of the people that are trying to diet, if you exercise and you're trying to lose weight, you got to exercise for more than 15 to 20 minutes before you start using fats. Long-term energy. How many animals, like a brown bear, rely on stored energy while they sleep through the winter? And that was the last slide for this particular chapter, Chapter 9, Respiration. Thank you, and I hope you do well on the test.